Today, Concord has set a live service game record, just probably not the one they were hoping for. This is CheckPoint.
Hello and welcome to CheckPoint, where it's time for another one of our patented
And recurring
CheckPoint check-ins.
No.
Yes. Beej, how are you doing?
10 items or fewer.
Hey, that's a check out.
Oh, sorry, no, that's what you are.
Yeah, so don't steal my jokes.
You haven't made any yet.
Well, that's not really the point of this segment.
Yeah, it's more of a meta-narrative.
About video game news? Alright, I'm starting the show now.
Hey, did anybody else hear that? It was sort of like a high-pitched whizzing noise. It sounded like the world speedrun record from game launch to end of service as Sony has pulled the plug on Concord, a game that was released, reviled, and refunded between episodes of CheckPoint. In development since at least 2018, though some estimates suggest longer, the Sony-owned Firewalk Studios began work on Concord when multiplayer hero shooters were a fairly fresh and hot idea. But now it's 2024, when even Overwatch isn't the beast it once was, and it's wild to launch a game that both, now charitably, clearly took a tremendous amount of work for a development house that must be absolutely soul-crushed, and uncharitably, was barely marketed and even then was framed like it was a knockoff Guardians of the Galaxy. It's even more baffling that Sony was going to charge $40 for it in the world of free-to-play, in a genre that's faltering, and while Valve are also working on their own 6v6 hero shooter that's already out in early access right now. According to SteamDB, the game peaked at a little under 700 players, with 1,300 PlayStation profiles owning the game, according to the notably opt-in tracking site PSN Profiles. Ars Technica compares this to PlayStation numbers for Star Wars Outlaws at 4,300 and Black Myth Wukong at 13,000. Concord's gimmick was supposedly going to be weekly rollouts of new animated cinematics to flesh out the characters and lore, which makes it even more rough that it lasted for 2 of those weeks before Firewalk's director Ryan Ellis published a post on the official PlayStation blog that the game was being taken offline and purchases would be refunded while they explored options, which is code for presumably making it free to play and somehow recoup maybe a fraction of the dev costs. I don't know why they needed a whole blog post to reach all the Concord fans. Surely they just could have hit up the group chat. But until those options are explored, Concord lives on as a sad punchline of a game that barely made it 2 weeks, and a punching bag for rage farmers who are gleefully spinning the narrative that the game failed because woke, and not because Sony dumped a $40 game into an already saturated, dying free-to-play marketplace with zero marketing and a cast of characters who feel like the Suicide Squad we have at home.
Genshin Impact's new update is catching a lot of heat from an unlikely, but actually completely understandable source: its own players. At the root of the issue is that the new update introduces a new gadget to create your own custom artifacts to spare all players from having to grind until they find the artifact perfect for their build. Also, new players can just start playing the game in Natlan, the new region, and do quests there without having to start in the old region and do old quests. The absolute cheek of these people. So longtime Genshin players are posting TikToks about how unfair it is they had to play this video game the way it was originally designed. And I see their point. How is this fair to all of the people who dumped all their time and, more importantly, money into your game, Hoyoverse? Can you imagine how it must feel to all of those poor whales who've given up hundreds of hours of their lives and probably thousands of dollars on gacha just to be shown that the game was never solely theirs to begin with? And for what? Attracting more players and making the game more popular? Nobody wants that. The original gamers got there first, and it's their dollars that you need to listen to. It's not fair. Everyone should have just as hard a time as I did, or else why did I spend all that time suffering godless agony when I thought I was actually enjoying a video game? Bad move by Hoyoverse, alienating all of their most loyal longtime players by releasing an update with quality of life improvements. And frankly, I see the problem right there. From how they're acting, it looks like OG Genshin fans are playing Genshin Impact because their lives are already terrible as it is. Showing them things can get better is just rubbing salt in the wound.
After 8 long years, development of No Man's Sky is finally complete. I need to be clear, that's not what Hello Games have said at all, and I'm sure they're still working on all of those seemingly endless updates and improvements they've been releasing and will likely continue to release as the years roll along. But as far as we here at CheckPoint are concerned, it is complete because, inspired by a piece of fan art no less, they've finally added a fishing minigame! You can use rare bait to catch rare fish, you can leave traps, you can fish alone or with friends, you can read messages in bottles. It's got everything except a hat that says, "Fish fear the infinite vastness of space," which I guess maybe isn't needed because, let's be honest, fish are kind of dumb and they probably can't even comprehend the finite vastness of a slightly larger lake.
Nintendo has made their museum. We'd heard about it in June 2021 when they said they'd be renovating the space of their old factory in Uji-Ogura into, quote, a new gallery to showcase the many products Nintendo has launched over its history. Now, Japan is really good at codifying and preserving their art forms and culture. No and Kabuki are two popular examples. Hell, I toured Himeji Castle when it was in the middle of its restoration, and they set up pavilions around the 7-story scaffolding so you could watch the workers tearing apart and rebuilding the castle. Because of that, it's not a surprise to me that Nintendo, at 135 years old, wants to take stock of their body of work. From what we've seen, there's a sizable amount of displays showing off not just their entry into the video game market, but a lot of stuff they made that came before. According to the tour video, they shoved all their baby strollers and board games and realistic firearms into a cabinet as if to say, this was a long journey. Look at all the other stuff we did. They even have a series of life-size dioramas you can step into to play bedroom baseball with the Ultra Machine, a phrase which in hindsight is a lot more lewd than I intended. Suffice to say, it's a museum, but it's also an interactive experience, like a science center, and that helps me realize their museum is also a corporate exercise, like Super Nintendo World. Nintendo builds things that are fun, so naturally, they'd also build a museum that's fun. And I feel like that's at odds with what we normally think of when we hear the word museum. Museums are places where everyone gets really quiet so they can stand around looking at art and contemplate it without distraction, right? Museums also have a lot of stuff on display from different eras so that you can see a bunch of different things from different places. But sometimes they also have a bunch of the same things from the same place so that you can deepen your understanding of those things and that place. Museums are curated by one or more curators, and they tend to be third parties to the thing you're looking at. Those people didn't make the thing, they're just obsessed with it. And so those curators also like to put in a bunch of different examples of the things they obsess over, especially when they are things that aren't widely known or things that poke holes in orthodoxy, because that's when history and art get really exciting, when you make new discoveries and you try to distill those discoveries into exhibits that might excite the general public, because frankly, you got to keep the lights on somehow. So my fear is that Nintendo's museum isn't going to, for example, feature a bunch of stuff from the GigaLeak. And we aren't going to see a lot of pictures of the old days of Nintendo or interviews with people from the past made into short little films you digest in a dark room while sitting on a bench. We aren't going to learn about toys or games that Nintendo was developing all the way up until those projects got canceled. And while I thought we would never see a box of N and B Block, Nintendo's Lego-compatible brick-building system from the 60s, there is one sitting in a stack of boxes in the tour video, so it's not like they're shading over the products that brought them lawsuits, especially since they won that one. So, okay, it's going to be heavily curated to show you just the parts of the past that they think are interesting or illustrative of how they see themselves. And frankly, that also fits in with what we don't really acknowledge about museums. For all the exhibits up front, there's a ton of stuff in museum backrooms that don't end up on display. That's why curators exist, right? To look at the options, create a theme, and then pick a few options based on the theme, which means some things in a museum's collection may rarely see the light of day. All this leads me to believe that the Nintendo Museum is not going to be a great learning experience for someone like me. I've been a fan for over 30 years. I'm familiar with the bulk of the stuff I'm seeing in the pictures of those exhibits. I have spent this whole piece trying to make the point that I'm looking for a scholarly experience, and the Nintendo Museum isn't made for me. So am I going? Yes, it's fucking fucking made for me. I want to make my own Hanafuda cards, even though I'm terrible at crafts. Heather and I can waggle a giant Wiimote around for some reason. I can spend the entire day inside eating bespoke hamburgers, just goofing around. If I wanted to read all day, why the hell did I pick video games as a hobby?
Thank you for watching CheckPoint, and don't forget to justify our existence to the robots by leaving us a little e-pellet of engagement nommies.
I am not okay with the framing of the situation.
Curious, and yet we still participate in it. Coming up, after much anticipation, the first teaser trailer for the Minecraft movie has been released, and in response, the gaming world would like to issue a formal apology to Telltale's Minecraft story mode. We said some mean things, but in our defense, we did not realize what the options were.
I hate the term teaser trailer, but I know it's a thing.
It's what is a trailer if not a teaser of the movie?
Yeah.
A teaser. A tickler. I feel like it is supposed to be for kids, so I don't want to be like, me, it's not for us. Which is kind of like the point of your Hoyoverse. That was so funny. I was like, the first time you read that, I was like,
My feeling on the Hoyoverse thing is just like, wow, you are so many of you, and I don't know how many, but it seems like if you're writing an article about it, there's enough of a instance that you want to talk about it. And I just like, there's that many people out there who are just like, I'm mad that other people are going to have it easy. And I'm like, it's like, I think I can imagine what it must feel like to feel like that every day, but I don't want to imagine what it feels like.
To be so bitter.
It's kind of, it's really disappointing.
You know what's really crappy? That nowadays we've got vaccines for things that people used to die of.
Yeah. What a terrible thing to have happened.
You know, back in my day, you had to go blind from measles. And then you had to deal with it. A lifelong of impairment.
Yeah. I mean, these days, everyone's trying to make it happen again, you know?
Yeah,
the good old days. But anyway, video games. Let's talk about video games.
You can just see Paul with like the warning light.
Yeah,
on the other side.
blinking the damn thing.
Yeah, move on. I don't know. We had some video game news this week. The Concord's pretty sad. We were talking about how like existentially crushing it would be. I said that it would be like working in a mortuary, but instead of human bodies, it would be your ambitions and your hope that were dying around you.
I'm curious to know if, like, at what point does...
I'm sorry, Concord.
At what point does Firewalk, like, do they find out that this is what's happening? Because if you're launching, and obviously Sony's probably crossing their fingers, they're like, we think this is going to happen, but I'm like, or are you reading so far ahead? Or are there like, is it one of these network things where, the executive vice president of programming has always had it out for your team and is never like the thing that you've been doing, but he's been protected by the executive vice president of a different
that's
thing.
probably more likely, honestly.
You know, it's just like, was this a political kill that's like, we think this is not going to succeed because they're like, well, it's $40 and nobody wants to pay for games anymore.
It could have been that it was like it was the project of an unpopular guy and it just got, sort of torpedoed from within, but yet not killed as to torpedo popular CEO or C-suite level exec's career as well as a huge bungle.
I love and I know that's all very political and speculative, right? Like it might not have anything to do with any of that.
No.
It could just be this.
But consider the stupid option.
Yeah. Because 2 weeks, 3 weeks to kill a game after it's barely been out just because you're like, well, we only had this many people buy it, so it's not going anywhere. And it's like, no one's willing to analyze the other side of it, which like you didn't tell anybody. I'd never heard of this game before.
No.
And I don't play PlayStation stuff and I don't watch State of Play and I don't do anything like that. And yet I am aware of when PlayStation games come out.
Do coverage.
Yes.
Of State of Play.
Yeah.
And like
I end up hearing about it somehow, so
I don't know.
Why didn't I hear about this?
Why, if it was a first party game, why wasn't it like a big State of Play thing they were making a big deal out of at any of like the upcoming events?
Yeah.
Reminding us that this was happening. It's very odd. And yeah, like I said, absolutely soul crushing probably to work on it.
As a very imprecise litmus test, I will say that I'm pretty sure Concord has never been mentioned on CheckPoint except for today.
There's that too.
Oh yeah.
So, which means that there hasn't been any interesting news about it that we thought
even
we
something-
wanted to that we wanted to talk about.
Even something mildly amusing.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I feel like I don't know. You asked me, what was the first question you asked me?
At what point did the people at Firewalk actually know, oh no, our game is getting killed? Do you think it was like when they dropped that blog post, or do you think they actually found out like a few days before? Or maybe at launch they're like, well, we're launching it and they're probably not going to do anything with it, so I guess
Slow death march.
Yeah.
They've known for months.
You just
Lemmings
know.
going to a cliff.
Right? It could just be as bad as that.
I mean, maybe, hopefully not.
Yeah. On the other hand, in terms of development, like Hello Games with the fishing thing, the other side of we'll be developing forever for 8
I
years.
love that. I love
think
that
it's
for
super
hell. No Man's Sky. What a complete 180.
Yeah, beautiful Cinderella story.
Beautiful, beautiful. An incredible experience, and many people love it. Can I talk about a mediocre... Well, no. Can I talk about an experience that some people will hopefully love?
Mm-hmm.
It's coming out in a couple of weeks. I got hired to write a Dungeons and Dragons compatible, aka it's OGL compliant, adventure for a holiday, a made-up online holiday called Pizzamas.
Ah,
And you can buy it when it comes out as part of the Pizzamas merch, and I can't say anything about it because it's all a big secret.
right.
But
But you're telling us about it now.
so you can get excited when it comes out, and you know that it's going to happen
Okay.
because I can say a couple of things. It includes a message board. It's completely optional and does not need to be engaged with in any way.
But it's there.
But it's there.
All right. Also, thank you to everybody who's backed us on Patreon at patreon.com/loadingreadyrun, and on Twitch and on YouTube, here in the LRRVG channel. You can, if you have backed us as a member on LRRVG, in fact, your names will be showing up at the end of this video, and thank you very much for doing that. See you later.
Bye-bye.
Dun, 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 dun. Where the fuck is my phone?